What's up, my comic comrades? It's no secret that Batman has had some dark and gritty stories in his 80-plus year history, and some of them are considered among the greatest Batman stories ever written. But Batman having darker stories shouldn't be a surprise to anyone because he's a character with a darker edge. Batman often says himself he is the Knight, meaning he sees the worst Gotham City has to offer. However, there are a handful, even among those classics, that are so heavy in tone and content that Hollywood will probably never touch them in live-action form, because they'd just be too brutal, controversial, or dark for their target audience. I mean, we all know Warner Brothers needs that PG-13 rating to get as many butts in theaters as possible. Either way, those untouchable Batman stories are the ones we're focusing on today. We're going to tell you which ones fall into that category and why. So let's get this started, and we're kicking things off with Batman Death of the Family. Batman Death of the Family deals with Joker having cut off his face and wearing the skin of his face like a mask, all Leatherface style. He then captures Batman in Batman issue 14 of his new 52 run, and the Joker tells Batman, "I know who you are under the mask." The same thing for all your little sidekicks. Your Bat Family. The point Joker is trying to make to Batman in this story is that the Bat Family makes Batman weak and that the Joker makes him stronger through his challenges. So Joker sets out to eliminate the Bat Family, saying it will make Batman better, not having them pulling him down. The story then follows an insane psychological horror plot that would never be greenlit by a studio. First and foremost, the Joker cuts off his face and wears it as a mask. It straight up only stays on with a leather belt he attached, along with crude staples and wire. It's pretty disgusting and terrifying. The reason Joker did this is to show Batman that beneath his grin, it's just more grin, and that beneath Batman's mask is something snouted and fanged, trying to make the point that he's Joker through and through and Batman is Batman through and through. However, it doesn't end there. You see, he even captures the entire Bat Family of Dick, Tim, Jason, Barbara, and Damian and cuts off all their faces. Joker captured them and sedated them, and when they all woke up at a dinner table, they see they have bandages wrapped around their faces and head, only for Joker to reveal their faces have been cut off like his and put on ice on a plate in front of them. It's absolutely crazy, and he did this to show Batman that under their faces is just soft, tender stuff, but under Joker and Batman's is just more of them. In short, Joker went to this extreme measure to say, hey, they wear a mask, and when they take it off, they're no longer that person, but we stay the same with or without the masks. Now, shortly after this, we learned that the Joker cutting off the Bat Family's faces was just a twisted joke to make his point, and he didn't really take off their faces. But nonetheless, the imagery and psychological horror was insane. I'm pretty sure you could all see why there's no way in hell this would ever get made into a live-action Batman movie. It's like Batman meets Texas Chainsaw Massacre meets Seven. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to see the story in live action, but it would have to be done right. No playing games with a classic story of this type. And don't even act like you don't know what I'm talking about. But while we're talking about great Batman stories, today's sponsor, FanHome, just launched a new Legends of Batman collection you guys need to know about. If the name FanHome rings a bell, it's because we've already shown you several of their amazing kits in the past, including the Millennium Falcon, the 66 Batmobile, their Infinity Gauntlet, and several others. To put it simply, they make some of the best collectible models you'll find anywhere. But now they've curated the most iconic Batman comic stories and assembled an amazing collection for you guys to bring home. Over the course of your FanHome subscription, you'll get 136 Dark Knight comics, including exclusive gifts like 3 Batman posters, metal bookends you could place on either side of your collectible series, and if you pay with PayPal, you'll get the cover artwork collector's book, Legends of Batman. In fact, right out the gate when you sign up, you'll score your first 6 titles with classics like Batman Zero Year One, Batman and Son, Batman Hush, and Flashpoint, along with the Legends of Batman printed plate and a mug shortly after. So this is one you want for your collection. Just click the link in our description to get your Legends of Batman subscription today. And while you're on their site, you gotta check out their other hot Marvel, Star Wars, and classic movie models too. Again, just click the link below and use our code VARIANT to let them know we sent you. Alright, another no-go Batman story for the live-action box office would be Batman the Killing Joke. Now, this story did get adapted for a home video animated release back in 2016, but it wasn't received very well due to the fact that it wasn't that good. Somehow they didn't get one of the most loved Batman stories right, with Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill reprising their roles as Batman and the Joker. But nonetheless, we aren't talking about home video movies, we're talking live action, theatrical. And let me tell you something, there ain't no way a live action Killing Joke movie would ever get made, because it would have to be a hard rated R. I'm sure many of you know, but if you don't know, the Killing Joke revolves around the Joker trying to make the point to Batman that anyone could be turned bad or go crazy from just one bad day. You see, the story is famously known for a few things, but one of the main things is it gives us the possible origin for the man that would become the Joker. And in that origin, we see that the Joker went bad from one bad day after his pregnant wife died and a robbery went wrong. This all leads to him falling into a vat of chemicals and turning him into the clown prince of crime. Now that's all shown to us in flashbacks, but in the present, Joker decides to prove to Batman that even Gotham's best can go mad with one bad day like the one he had many years ago. He demonstrates this by going to Gordon's apartment, knocking on the door, and when Barbara opens it, he shoots her in the spine, paralyzing her. Then when Gordon goes to check on his daughter and attack the Joker, he's knocked out by the Joker's goons. It's then implied that Joker sexually assaults Barbara. When she asks, "Why are you doing this?" he says while taking off her shirt, "To prove a point, here's to crime." So that alone is incredibly heavy and dark, but somehow it gets worse. We later see Joker has kidnapped Gordon, stripped him naked, and restrained him to a carnival dark ride where he forces him to stare at naked pictures of his daughter Barbara that Joker put all over inside the ride while Joker says, "Don't get even, get mad." It is so insanely graphic, and to this day it remains one of the darkest moments in comics. Stripping a father naked, forcing him to look at pictures of his wounded naked daughter, all to prove to Batman that even the best can go mad with one bad day. It ultimately doesn't work, and even after all that, when Batman frees Gordon, he tells Batman, "I want him brought in, and I want him brought in by the book." Following up saying, "By the book, you hear me? We have to show him that our way works." Which is a true statement to Gordon as a character. But nonetheless, the extremely heavy nature of this story, specifically what Joker does to Gordon and Barbara, almost guarantees we will never see this adapted live action. Although, if done right, it would be one hell of a Batman movie. Next up, we have Batman Bloodstorm. This is a Batman Elseworld story that imagines Batman as a vampire. You see, after defeating Dracula in Batman and Dracula Red Reign, Batman became a vampire himself and is now struggling with his newfound bloodlust. But even so, Batman continues his war on crime as a vampire, going after a gang of vampires led by the Joker because, of course. Now, the reason we will never see this movie is because, like all the stories we're mentioning, they are way too rated R, and Batman Bloodstorm is crazy. On the first few pages of the comic, we see Batman put a stake right through the chest of a butt-naked female vampire. Blood and nudity all at the same time. This story is filled with that, and we see dismembered bodies left and right. It's one of the most graphic Batman stories. To push that point even further, we see a vampire bite an entire dude's face off. It's a Batman story not for the faint of heart. The story is also very risque and graphic, not for children in the least, but that's how a vampire story done right should be, as the subject matter was never intended for children. The story even ends on a downer with Batman leaving a note for Alfred and Gordon to kill him in his sleep as he can no longer live as a bloodthirsty vampire. Point is, as unfortunate as it may be, Warner Brothers will never make a rated R Batman vampire movie. Next up, we have Batman Night Cries. Now, this is one of the most mature Batman stories in the sense that it deals with very dark themes of child abuse and how it impacts society. The story follows Batman as he investigates several child abuse cases within Gotham City. As Batman digs deeper and deeper into the investigation, he encounters several suspects diving into the horrible nature of abuse and its psychological effects on its victims. Again, the story deals with abuse of children, death of children, and real-world issues that are horrible. Not like supervillains and fantastical things, no. Things our society actually deals with. The story has the weight and darkness of movies like Seven, making it extremely heavy and rough to get through. A great story, but one that'll never get adapted for the big screen because of its context. Next up, we have a Batman story I know all of you were waiting for me to mention, and it's a no-brainer, and that is Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on Serious Earth. Just looking at the artwork for this story, you can tell how abstract and serious in tone it's going to be. This is highly regarded as one of the best Batman stories ever made, and that's because of how much it dives into the psyche of Batman and his villains trapped within Arkham Asylum. It's drawn hauntingly by Dave McKean, which really sets the atmosphere for the intense story, which is told by the great Grant Morrison. The story takes place in Arkham Asylum, as you would assume, Gotham's infamous psychiatric hospital for the criminally insane. Anyway, on April Fool's Day, the inmates led by the Joker, of course, take over the asylum, taking the staff hostage. They then demand Batman to come to the asylum, threatening to kill the hostages if the Dark Knight doesn't comply. Batman obviously agrees and enters essentially a haunted house where he is subjected to a nightmare journey of the psychopaths that are the inmates of Arkham. We see him come face to face with several of his iconic villains like Clayface, Mad Hatter, and Two-Face as he's forced to confront his own fears and doubts about his sanity and the nature of the crime-fighting crusade he's taken up. This story is straight up a Batman horror story, meaning it would have to be a rated R Batman movie. That's how you would have to adapt it if you wanted to stay true. The story is a psychological horror, very ominous and mature. It really breaks down the psyche of several of Batman's villains like the Mad Hatter, Joker, and more, seeing what makes them tick and why they really are so terrifying. To be honest, I'm not even sure if they wanted to, they could capture what this book was able to pull off. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure if they wanted to, they could come close, but some stories are just better expressed in different mediums of art, and this one is very driven by the illustrations and the atmosphere. Not all stories told through comics can translate 100% to film. Nonetheless, this is probably a Batman story Warner Brothers will never touch. And finally, a story I don't think they'll ever adapt is the Flashpoint Batman and Joker storyline. Not necessarily the whole Flash creating the Flashpoint universe, and then when he goes back to his universe, it's the beginning of the New 52, with him creating an entirely new timeline. That was sort of kind of loosely done in the solo Flash movie. Even though it was so loosely done, I feel like James Gunn could do it the right way for his rebooted universe. But I'm talking about the Thomas Wayne Batman and Martha Wayne Joker story from the 3-issue miniseries. This was an amazing story that showed us in the Flashpoint timeline, Bruce's parents became Batman and the Joker. His dad Batman, his mom the Joker. You see, after Bruce was killed in the Flashpoint universe, it caused his mother to go crazy, ultimately turning into the Joker, and his dad swearing a life of fighting crime, becoming Batman. In issue 3 of Flashpoint Batman Night of Vengeance, we learn how Martha slowly turned into the Joker. You see, like I briefly said, months after Bruce's death, we learned that Martha isn't able to get over the death of Bruce, with Thomas saying, "He's gone, you have to accept that, and I miss him too, along with your smile." But the word smile creepily perks Martha up, and she says, "What, Thomas?" After this, we see Thomas track down Joe Chill and beat him to death in an alley. He then returns home to Wayne Manor saying, "Martha, he's dead." Martha then says, "I understand, Thomas." See? As she turns around saying, "I'm smiling," as we see she puts slits in her cheeks, all Heath Ledger Joker style. At this point, Thomas has his wife taken away as she's clearly lost her mind and gone full crazy, as we see her laughing hysterically, turning into this world's Joker. So does this tell us that the Joker was right? It really takes one bad day for someone to go mad? In Martha's case, I suppose. But of course, she would escape and become the clown prince of crime, which would all lead to a final confrontation with Batman and her. A brutal one where Batman is able to grab her saying, "What if I told you there was a world where our son lives? I have an opportunity to make that real, to rewrite history. And as twisted as it sounds, I need to know from you, Martha. Should I?" She starts crying, saying, "Promise me you will." He says, "I do." She then says, "Tell me about Bruce. What does he do after we're dead?" He says he follows in his father's footsteps. She asks, "He's a doctor?" He says, "No." She then says, "Oh God," as she starts running off saying, "No, stay away from me." But she ultimately falls down a cavern and dies. So the thought of her son becoming Batman ultimately killed her, as we see her laying there broken with blood coming out of her mouth. Now this one we put on here because we don't think they'll ever make it because of the graphic nature of it. As within the story, you see Jim Gordon's throat gets slit by the Joker, and you see Harvey Dent's little daughter killed in a horrific way. The overall themes are just extremely dark and mature. However, I do think out of all the stories mentioned today, this would be the one most likely to get adapted and probably just be tamed down a bit, which I would love to see because this Elseworlds alternate reality is fantastic. I really dig the dynamic of Bruce's dad being Batman and his mom being the Joker, and the way the story was done by Brian Azzarello was brilliant. In any case, friends, those are a handful of Batman stories we think Hollywood would never turn into a live action film. There are several more, so let us know what your list would be down in the comment section. Other than that, we'll see you next time when we talk about all things comics.